Hi everyone and welcome to On the Hill. I'm your host John Lixette, and today we're at the Minnesota State Capitol. And this is a brand new show designed to show you a little bit about your senators and representatives in South Washington County. You'll also meet a woman who's working to preserve the history of the Capitol and learn about how a bill becomes a law in Minnesota. But first, back in February, District 54 held a special election. Let's take a second to meet the newest legislator on the Hill, Senator Carla Bigham.
Hi, I'm Carla Bigham, and I'm the state senator for Senate District 54. I was elected to the Minnesota State Senate for Senate District 54 on Monday, February 12th.
Solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
I was born and raised in Washington County. I'm a proud product of the public schools. I have a PhD, a Park High diploma. Went to Winona State, received my bachelor's degree as a paralegal. I've been on the Cottage Grove City Council. I was a Minnesota State representative for this area for 4 years. I retired to go back to get my graduate degree at the University of Minnesota with a master's in public affairs. And I also got married to my husband, John, then decided to run for the Washington County Board of Commissioners, which I was most recently a member of prior to the special election. As a young child, I always was very interested in government and how it can help people. My father was captain of the fire department in Cottage Grove, and when he retired, my brother took over as captain of the fire department. Just part of who I am is to give back to the community and invest in our community, and it's important to me. I currently live in Cottage Grove. We have 2 rescue dogs, Shotzi and Rizzo. I also really love movies. The Oscar Awards are just a very big day for me because I just love watching. I also am a huge football fan. I'm in multiple fantasy football leagues and just love football. There are quite a few people that have had an impact on my life. You know, my grandparents were very passionate about politics and about the labor movement. My grandfather worked for 40 plus years at Swift & Company, and he used to tell me the stories about the labor strikes and the movement here in South St. Paul. And also my family in general. They are very generous people. They're very kind people. I believe the Capitol needs a culture change in more ways than one. And one of those ways is making sure that we do a better job of working together across the aisle. You know, we have water quality issues throughout the district. We have education, transportation, and healthcare and jobs, and how do we help small businesses? You know, those are the types of issues that I'm going to be focused on as the state senator for this area.
A special thanks to Town Square Television for producing that piece for us. Well, and speaking of District 54, we've got Senator Carla Bigham, Representative Keith Franke, and Representative Tony Juergens. Thank you guys for being with us here today.
Thanks for having us.
I'm going to start with you, Carla. Congratulations on the win in February. Tell me about what it's like to serve in this new capacity.
You know, it's different from the House and obviously from the county, but you know, you have very diverse issues that you handle, but it's such an honor to be able to represent the residents of 54, my hometown where I grew up, and so it's, you know, you just got to keep doing the work of the people and being out there and building relationships and listening to them and what their needs are.
Representative Franke, I'm going to move to you. You've been very vocal this year about drug issues that are facing the state. Obviously, there's been issues with heroin. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing at the Capitol here to make some changes.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, opioids are a big epidemic that we're facing right now. And I've taken on several pieces of legislation that are dealing with how do we combat opioids. Been working very closely with Representative Dave Baker, who lost his son tragically to an overdose. Also have been appointed my own task force on addiction and recovery. My point there being that opioids seem to be, the drug of choice right now, but we have several other types of addictions that plague Minnesota every day, and I want to be able to figure out how to close those gaps to provide the services we need to help stop, or at least put our hand out for all people battling with addictions. So that's something that's been near and dear to me, and we're going to hopefully start meeting in about a couple of weeks here. The task force is being formulated, and looking forward to that and looking forward to taking on those challenges. So I'm very excited.
Representative Juergens, you have a very interesting bill that came out about school lunches and bullying. Would you care to talk about that a little bit?
First of all, Jonathan, thank you for having us here today. This is a great forum, and I appreciate the opportunity. That bill came about because of some things that I saw in the news back in November down in Stewartville, Minnesota, where some kids who would get to the front of the lunch line and found out that they didn't have any money in their lunch account, and so they were dumping their lunches. And even though that the state of Minnesota made that illegal back in 2014, I found out that wasn't the only case. It's been happening in other areas of the state. I heard from others in the metro area as well. And whether that's the law or not, I don't know who thinks it's okay to do that. I mean, the lunch is already there, it's already served. Why would you throw it in the garbage? So I've been working on legislation to fine tune that, put some more teeth into that bill or into that law if we could. I'm still working on that language. But I'm hopeful that we'll get it included in the Education Omnibus bill. And essentially what that does is it spells out specifically what schools or third-party companies that they're contracting with for hot lunches, what they're not allowed to do. They're not allowed to do anything that would stigmatize the child. I don't even want them to put a sticker on their, a stamp on their hand or a sticker on their shirt or anything like that. As far as I'm concerned, that's between the school and the parent. Just let the kids be kids, feed them their meal, and then you deal with the parents.
Obviously, another big issue in South Washington County right now is this settlement that 3M has made due to some of the groundwater issues. I'm going to just throw this out to the three of you guys. What's being done to make this right?
So we're working together, the three of us, on a variety of pieces of legislation. This is a top priority for me to make sure that the $850 million settlement is spent in the affected area and not on fishing piers and stuff like that. Our priority is clean drinking water and making sure that the aquifer is as clean as it can possibly get using these funds in the affected area, because that should be a top priority for all of us, is clean drinking water, and we want to make sure that we're working towards those efforts. The first bill is to essentially create in the remediation fund, where this money is, a separate account for this money, and then require reporting on it. And that will ensure transparency and making sure that we can hold folks accountable up here for how they're spending the money. The other bill is private well testing, making sure that folks that are on private wells know if there's contamination, the level, and then would be able to go through a process for remediation of the wells.
I think one of the things that people don't understand, and I think I was brought aback by the language in the settlement a little bit, and I think we all were concerned about, there was 3 priorities laid out in the settlement. The first one said, of course, quality drinking water, and then the second one had to deal with environmental issues. The third priority laid out was, should priority 1 and 2 be approved or fulfilled or deemed fulfilled by the agencies, i.e. the DNR and MPCA, the final amount of money that they consider not spent can be spent in other areas in the state of Minnesota. And I think all of us are saying that that money needs to stay in our area. That money doesn't need to go anywhere else. We are going to have issues for years and years, and we have no idea how long to come. So that money needs to be kept within the system for our areas. And I know Representative Juergens actually had a hearing on one of the bills.
We did.
Last week.
And just this past week in the House Environment Committee, we had a bill on that Senator Bigham is carrying in the Senate on the private well testing. And that bill is pretty short, pretty simple, but the testimony took over an hour. The Environment Committee had a lot of really good questions for the MPCA, Department of Health, and the Attorney General's office. And so they were good questions, and it was a good opportunity to hear the answers. And so I just, at the conclusion of that, I brought everybody back and said, okay, this is about well testing. You know, it's nice to hear all this information, but this is about the residents of our area and the affected area having the opportunity to request that they have their wells tested for peace of mind. People are worried. People are worried about their health, the health of their kids. And like Representative Franke said, with the priority 1 and priority 2, these PFCs aren't going away. So priority 1 and 2 are never going to be complete. So that money there should never be an opportunity or a need for that money to go anywhere else in the state.
Well, I know 2018 is a big bonding year for everybody, so let's start with Representative Juergens. Tell me, what are some of your priorities this year for the bonding?
Yep, priority 1 is the Hero Center in Cottage Grove, and priority 1 is the Hastings City Hall restoration project. They're both number 1 to me. And I've had hearings this year on both of them. Just this past week, we had the city administrator from Hastings, Melanie Mesco-Lee, and the city planner, Justin Fortney, came in. We had a hearing in the Capital Investment Committee. A few weeks ago, we had representatives from both Woodbury and Cottage Grove to the bonding committee to present the need for the Hero Center. So those are the 2 needs, and I'm working hard to make sure that we get both of those included in the bonding bill.
Keith?
Well, thank you. I am carrying some legislation for South St. Paul. Seidels Lake, it's a small little lake in South St. Paul that needs some assistance in monitoring or getting the levels back and forth through overflow. It's a nice little project. I've been carrying it for 2 years now. I'm hoping to get it through. It's a nominal amount as far as everything else is concerned. Also have a library project for South St. Paul, and a project that I asked to carry for the Hennepin County and the city of Minneapolis has to do with the Avivo project due to my concerns in my work in the treatment center areas. It's a program that I found that hits all the benchmarks as far as I'm concerned and serves over 17 counties. So that's another piece of legislation. And then I think all of us can agree that we want to see some bonding money into HEAPR and to help with the assistance to our higher education to get some of those buildings fixed and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to see what the end product comes out as. But I've had a couple of hearings now in bonding and very excited to move those projects forward.
Senator Bingham.
So I'm carrying those bills in the Senate for the district. Hero Center is a top priority. Hastings City Hall, Seidels Lake Library, they're all very important projects to our area. So I won't repeat what these guys have said about that. But a couple other priorities would be wetland replacement. That's a big deal for counties. They are required by state law to replace wetlands when they disrupt them from road projects, for example. We need to give them money to replace those. Otherwise, it's an unfunded mandate, and your property taxes are used to replace that. The other issue that's very important to Washington County and Dakota County are parks money, and that's carried in, regional park money is carried in the bonding bill. And so we're going to be having a grand opening for Ravine Lake in June, but that's only phase 1. And without this very important money coming from the bonding bill, the later phases for some of these regional parks will be delayed. So we need to, on top of the items that have been mentioned, the other priority for me is housing for mental illness. Senator Dave Senjum from Rochester is carrying that in the bonding proposal, and I do hope that survives the whole process. But the Senate hasn't really been having hearings, and it doesn't have a slided spot for committee, and so I'm assuming that will happen after some of these deadlines. We're getting little weeds, but it's okay.
Well, obviously there are a lot of big things happening in both the House and the Senate, and I just want to thank you guys for taking some time out of your busy schedule to sit down and chat with us a little bit today. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thanks for the discussion.
Thank you.
We're holding both of our roundtable discussions here at the Cass Gilbert Library, named for the architect of the Capitol. Earlier this fall, our producers met up with a group trying to preserve some of the pieces that Gilbert brought to the Capitol in 1905.
It's a journey that began in 1896 with a man named Cass Gilbert.
So he was young when he got the Capitol Commission. He was 35 years old. This was really what kickstarted his career.
Construction crews built the Capitol to Gilbert's exact specifications in 1905. From dome to floor, Gilbert had a hand in everything, including the furniture.
He was very detailed in his designs, specific about where they would go and how the furniture would complement the space and his vision for what it should look like.
But as the years went by, items were worn out, and some of these items flat out disappeared. Cue the Cass-Gilbert Society.
These were very specifically designed and placed. They're gorgeous. You can see this like inlay there.
Natalie Hennigan is a project manager for the furnishings of the 1905 State Capitol project. For the last 7 months, she's been on the hunt for over 800 tables, chairs, and bookcases that once lined the halls of the state capitol.
One of the most interesting parts of this project for me is to learn about how items of furniture have taken on lives of their own, especially after leaving the Capitol.
The most common disappearing item? Chairs used by members of the House of Representatives.
And so far in this project, we found 7 of the original chairs.
Replicas like this one were placed in the Capitol in the early 1970s. Representatives were given a chance to take home their chairs, and many jumped at the opportunity.
One popped up in Colorado in the home of a former legislator's grandson, so now he has it in his family home.
The library on the 3rd floor is of particular interest to Natalie.
This room was used for storage or something. Now, of course, it's opened up and used as the Cass-Gilbert Library. So this is all original furniture in here.
17 of these chairs remain in the Capitol of the 59 that were ordered in 1905.
These brass tags are one of the early ways that the furniture in the building was identified and inventoried.
Early systems of inventory weren't very efficient, which may have contributed to many of the items' disappearances.
There wasn't a standard way of inventorying or cataloging all the furniture until the late 80s.
And difference.
But these bookshelves are pretty cool.
From piece to piece.
A stamp on it that says State of Minnesota, or that's kind of like painted on.
Makes the search a bit more difficult.
There are only 4 left in the building, and I think it was a small order to begin with, maybe like 16 or 18.
But the payoff is huge. These pieces aren't just part of the Capitol.
Furniture is interesting, and especially in the Capitol, none of it here is roped off. It's meant to be used, it's meant to be sat on. It's people work on this furniture.
They're part of its history, of our history.
In a sense, it's one of the pieces about this very grandiose, extravagant building that we can all kind of relate to, I think.
Although the Cass-Gilbert Society has inventoried many of these items, there are no plans to return them to the Capitol. You can find out more about this project by visiting the Minnesota Historical Society. Well, we've got the representatives and senator from District 53 here. We have Susan Kent, Kelly Fenton, and Joanne Ward. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
First, we're going to start with Representative Fenton. There's been some recent events in Florida that have caused many legislators to sit down and think about school security. So what's being done in the House to address that issue?
Thank you so much. And I do want to just say that what happened in Florida is a huge tragedy, and I think there was a systemic failure there as well at all levels of government and law enforcement and school administration. But we are taking a deep dive in it. A couple of things that we've done in the past few years is the new facility, maintenance facility, long-term maintenance facility revenue fund, which allows schools to use. We're looking at expanding that to allow schools to use to do improvements, safety, security improvements as they can. We've also really invested in school-linked mental health grants to help tackle mental health issues. I'm a co-sponsor as well of getting more school counselors into our schools. I think early intervention in the area of mental health is key. We're looking at what can we do to get more school resource officers as well. All of those kinds of initiatives, as well as yesterday there was a bill in the education finance related to bonding, and this is a completely new concept, but looking at getting bonding money so that schools, so that schools can access that for the various safety improvements that they may need. I mean, every school district is going to be different. Some may have already, taken measures. Some still need to take measures. We're looking at school threat assessments as well. These are all the various bills that are moving through the House. And, a few of them we had passed and funded last session, the last few sessions. We'll look at expanding those and getting more money into that. One is a former teacher, a former school administrator. One of the key things for student learning is students want to feel safe in their environment, and we're looking at all types of measures to make sure that they have that.
Senator Kent, I know that another big issue for the area of Woodbury especially is the 494, 694 interchange. And I know you've been working closely with Representative Fenton on that issue. Tell me a little bit about what is in the works for that.
Well, and I'll first say Representative Ward has also been deeply involved in this. It's actually located in our part of Woodbury, Oakdale, Maplewood. That is a major challenge. We hear about it all the time in our community. It is a congestion issue and it is a public safety issue. And one of the big challenges is that freight is increasing, so it's those big 18-wheelers coming through. And I like to remind people that that particular interchange, if you think of where freight is coming from and to, so you think about western states through Minnesota, coming down from Duluth and the port, going through to Wisconsin and Chicago and points east. It is a crucial hub, and freight is only growing, so this problem is only going to get worse. Everybody knows it needs to be dealt with. Representative Fenton has led with a bill that would look at a public safety study, which is important to start that legislative discussion. I have a bill that's bonding, and I'm drafting one now that's just a flat-out appropriation. But what we know is it's going to cost about $210 million to fully rebuild that interchange to meet the current and future demands. And the problem is that's not even in MnDOT's 20-year plan, which when people hear that, they're pretty stunned. But that's because the funding that we have for our road and bridges in this state, there's just not the room in there to take on those kinds of major projects. And there are other projects similar to that throughout the metro and the state that need that level of support as well. So we're doing this because we're trying to get it on the list. We're trying to call attention to it as a real source of commerce and public safety and just getting people to and from where they need to go.
Representative Ward, I know a big issue that's been coming out lately in the Senate and really everywhere has been this issue of sexual harassment. And I'm just curious what's being done at the House level to curb that problem.
Well, thank you for asking. It is a big problem. And the dynamics of a political setting, legislative setting anywhere has a lot of power in it. And those without guardrails leave people open to being really vulnerable to some serious problems and damage. So the House had a full day of session. The first full day of session we had training in the morning and then again in the afternoon to begin the discussion. It's not the final thing. We need to keep working on that. There still needs to be things. Then I know the Senate has their own training schedule and they have this ongoing. It's been years since the House has done any training on this. So much needed and it's being addressed, but it needs more. And I would say too that in the middle of that day, the Civility Caucus was given an opportunity to have lunch and a program time. And the Civility Caucus has been growing and it's really all about respect, listening to each other, having a level playing field so that we're able to actually accomplish some things. And I think that that's going to have be an element in moving this forward. Everyone needs a safe and respectful working place. And if we don't do it at the legislature, we can hardly expect other people to do it. So what is happening too is that there's movement for task force. I think that, I'm not sure the House and the Senate are going to end up doing it the same way, but to have a way, I mean, it's always been against the law, but the process for dealing with it has never been rigorous. in the legislature. So that's being addressed in a way that I think will be much more productive. As far as I'm concerned, it can't happen fast enough. We need to keep people safe in that way as well.
Well, the other big thing happening in the legislature is, of course, the 2018 bonding bills that are going through. So we'll start with Senator Kent. Can you tell me a little bit about what your priorities are this year?
Well, one of the big priorities in our region, and I know my colleagues agree with me on this one, it's the Hero Center, which is slated to be located in Cottage Grove at near the government center. But it's a joint effort between the cities of Woodbury and Cottage Grove. And it will ultimately be a regional public safety training facility. And it's going to be a huge asset to not only the law enforcement agencies that we serve, but those throughout the East Metro. So it's huge, it's really important. There's a lot of local support for it in terms of funding, and then we're looking for a state support as well. The other one that I will point out, and I'll leave a couple for my colleagues to talk about, is in Battle Creek Park in Ramsey County. They're looking to do some winter recreation enhancements, and that seems like kind of a small thing, but it is big for our communities and for our health. We don't have anything like that in the East Metro. It's a very small commitment, and we're now pointing out that gold medalist Jessie Diggins has trained there, and she's a big supporter of increasing this as well, and it's pretty exciting to have her lend her voice to this particular project.
Representative Fenn.
Thank you. I'm going to piggyback on that because I'm the chief author of the bonding proposal for Battle Creek enhancements. And there's another, many of our schools in the East Metro are vying for time to train with some of the winter sports. And they're having to go all the way over to the west side. And so this is hugely important, even to improve the athletic programs of our schools, our high schools and whatnot, as well as if we can get this bonding proposal through for Battle Creek. There's work being done right now to get the World Cup of winter sports here. That's going to be a huge piece of that. If we can get that funding, that will be play into whether or not we as a state can get the World Cup here. And it's my understanding that Jessie Diggins is going to make a visit here to the Capitol. I'm looking forward to meeting her. I'm also a co-sponsor of the Hero Center on the House side. That's very important to our all of our public safety law enforcement, and being a regional center as well. So those are some of the key things, as well as I do have the bill, the bonding proposal, to get the conversation started for the 494, 694 interchange. So, I think working hard, though, to push my top two initiatives of the Hero Center and the Battle Creek enhancements.
Representative Ward.
Oh, thank you. Politics is a team sport, and we're quite a team. So I'm going to piggyback on the Battle Creek as well, just to explain that in Battle Creek Park, we have the most challenging trails for training. The only thing we don't have there is snowmaking capacity. And we need that to do the World Cup, to do all of these other kinds of things. And that's one of the reasons that our students have to travel so far to do their practices and their training. And we know this is a big sport in our part of the country. So it will draw from everywhere during school and after school, and people will come. This will be a destination. So it's a small investment with, I think, a huge opportunity for return. Going on, we have Century College. It's not in our district, it's just outside of our district, but it is East Metro jewel. And their infrastructure has been neglected. It's a state asset that we need to put some money into to invest in the preservation and the expansion of the marvelous programs they have there. We know we need skilled trades, we know we need skilled workers in lots of areas, and Century College is a remarkable and well-respected place to get that training.
One of our coworkers is actually a Century College grad, so he's a product of that for sure. But finally, I'll just leave it at this. Representative Ward, you announced that you're going to be retiring at the end of this year. Tell me a little bit about that decision and what your time here has meant for you.
Oh my. It was a difficult decision. It's one that I actually get challenged on every day. and it gives me pause, but it's the right thing to do for my family now. It's time for a new chapter in my life. I have some family obligations that I need to be able to have more time for. And I'm looking forward to reading books and working in my garden and traveling and doing some of the other things that people like to do inspirement. That's the term, inspirement, because I am inspired to do a lot of other things. I want to be more involved in my community at a closer level, volunteering at the food shelf and some places like that I've always been involved in. And it's been really hard to do in being here at the legislature. And I plan on coming back. I will continue my work with civility, working on the Civility Caucus. We had some great discussions in the Education Committee yesterday and Public Safety. So I'm really passionate about early intervention, youth intervention, early childhood, prenatal to 3, because 3 to 6 gets a lot of attention, and we've been working on that. But we really need to start earlier. You mentioned interventions early. We need to really start early. So I'm not going to be gone. I realize that it's easier now to say I'll be back, and the reality is that I'll have to make time for that. But that's a commitment that I'm making.
Well, I just want to really thank the three of you for being here with me today and sharing your thoughts about this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've all heard the Schoolhouse Rock song before about how a bill becomes a law, but the actual process is just a little bit more complicated, as you'll see in this next segment.
How does a bill become a law in Minnesota? The simple answer? A law is an idea placed in bill form that has passed both the House of Representatives and the Senate and has not been vetoed by the governor. The more complex answer? It starts as an idea. Anyone can come up with an idea for a law, but only an elected member of the House and Senate can move the idea through the process. Each bill has to have a chief author from the House and the Senate. Basically, legislators that sponsor the bill and put their names on it. Bills can also have co-authors. Next, a legislator brings their bill to the Office of Reviser of Statutes offices. These legal smarty pants help turn the bill into proper legal speak. Then it's time for introductions. The chief House author introduces the bill in the House, and the chief Senate author introduces the bill to the Senate. This is called the first reading. The bill is then sent to committee. Once discussed, the committee members recommend approval or disapproval to the full House and full Senate. If the committee disapproves, the bill is dead. If it makes it to the floor of the House and Senate, the bill has a second reading and is placed on the agendas. Here's where things differ from the House and Senate. In the House, the bill goes on what's called the General Register, where it waits to be acted on. In the Senate, bills are listed on the General Orders agenda. Senate members have a chance to debate the issue and offer amendments. Afterwards, they vote to recommend the bill pass, not pass, progress, or have further committee action. From there, the bill is placed on the calendar. The bill now gets its third reading in the House and the Senate. It needs 68 votes to pass the House and 34 votes to pass the Senate. If the House and Senate each pass the same version of the bill, it goes to the governor for a signature. If the bills differ, it goes to a conference committee that meets to work out differences and reach a compromise. The bill then goes to the House and the Senate for another vote. If it's approved, it's sent to the governor, who can then sign it, veto it within 3 days, or allow it to become a law without signing it. And that's how a bill becomes a law in Minnesota.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you'd like to follow your local legislator, you can follow them on the Minnesota House or Senate websites. Thanks for joining us on the Hill. We'll see you next time.